You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
Good Thursday morning and welcome in to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It is the Morning Boys with your host, Ryan Hickey, right here on this Thursday morning. Hopefully everyone's having a great week, staying safe, and more importantly, and just as importantly, staying sane as we are with you here on this Thursday morning. A beautiful, beautiful Thursday morning. And since we got off the air on Monday, for the first time really since the entire world shut down, there's hope. I feel some hope in the air. For the first time in a while, I feel confident that not only sports can return, we can get them to return in somewhat of a normal sense. You know, since we got off the air, we had Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York. You had Gavin Newsom, governor of California. You also had Texas. All three of those states coming out and supporting pro sports resuming in their states starting on June 1st. So for the first time, whether it's Major League Baseball slowly working their way to formulating a plan to resuming. You have the NBA now really seems gung-ho on resuming, and that will be in a bubble city, which we'll start with here in just a little bit. But for the first time really in a while, whether it's having some live sports last week with Bundesliga, with NASCAR, with a golf exhibition tournament, and now, again, you see some of these major sports leagues starting to really make some strides and really make some real efforts to resuming. It is a great, great, great time to be a sports fan. At least finally we get some hope for the first time, like I said, really what it feels like about 2 months or so. If you listened, I've been pretty pessimistic, been pretty doubtful on sports resuming somehow and resuming safely, but at least you see whether it's safety protocols that are being thrown out, there's different ways that these major sports are trying their best to keep athletes and players safe, which obviously is first and foremost. And if you can't resume a league safely, there's no reason and no need to do it. It's not that important. But like you said, it's really for the first time we're getting some hope that finally, maybe there's a glimmer that this summer will be filled with a lot of the sports that we love and hold near and dear, and maybe some normalcy will definitely come back, especially now as Memorial Day weekend enters about us. There's really, that's really all we want, right? Just some normality back to our lives, whether it's going to the beach, whether it's enjoying the summer, and at least hopefully you start to see some strides, whether it's states loosening restrictions, and now, like I said, now whether it's sports slowly starting to resume. There's hope, and that's all we can really ask for at this point. And hopefully we just keep continuing the steps there to really make a full recovery, a full return, and do it safely. So like I said, we have a great show, a lot of hope in the air. We'll start with the NBA, but also want to get into, didn't have time to get to a Monday, but it's still very noteworthy and at least took a different turn, and that is the lack of diversity in the NFL, whether it's head coaches, whether it's assistant coaches, whether it's general managers, front office personnel. There is not a lot of diversity, and that is a major, major problem in the NFL, especially when you consider the workforce, the labor, the players themselves, right? About 70% minority players that make up the workforce. So really that disparity between front office and decision makers compared to the actual players on the field, it does not reflect. And the big issue, and at least the big discussion is, well, how can these leagues, or really how can the NFL promote diversity, right? You can't force owners to hire certain candidates, whether it's, again, general manager or front office. How can you make sure that the diversity that's majorly lacking, again, in the coaching ranks and the front office ranks, how can you ensure that ratio continues to get closer to the middle and reflect the workforce? I have an idea, or at least I have what's holding it back. And it's not going to be the Rooney Rule. It's not going to be really any other rule that the NFL wants to implement. I'll discuss really the biggest thing that's holding back diversity in the NFL. We'll get to that in 20 minutes. Last week, Joe Buck was on SiriusXM Radio and had an interesting comment about how Fox, at least, will go about broadcasting NFL games without fans in the stands. And I want to get your thoughts on what he said it could possibly happen and see if that would be a good idea from the viewing experience. We have our NFL most intriguing teams list, number 16, 13. We didn't get to it on Monday, so we have right now at least the back half, the last half of the least intriguing, most boring teams we've gone through. So now we're going to enter the front half, and like I said, number 16 through number 13 today. Obviously, 10:20 Eastern, as you know. 2020 Apocalypse will have a new contestant. 5 questions. Get the most right. Sarah crushed it on Monday. She is tied for the lead with Lauren as they both got 4 out of 5. So if you want first place, if you want that gift card, got to go 5 out of 5. Go perfect if you want to get in first place and own the leaderboard. And we'll finish up this. I wanted to get into this Monday, but we didn't have enough time. Why is there so much hate towards LeBron James? And think The Last Dance, for how great it was, and again, I was hooked. I think a lot of people look at social media were hooked on those 5 Sundays that ESPN brought out. But I feel like, not only do we enjoy a lot of what Michael Jordan did, I feel like also a lot of it was taking shots at LeBron James. So I'm just going to ask a question that I don't have the answer to, but I love if you are not a fan to get your thoughts on just why is there so much hate for a guy that's just so great. But we'll get into that, as I said, a little bit later on. But I do want to we'll stick with the NBA because, like I said, speaking of hope, right? Speaking of these leagues really starting to resume, and you're starting to see now the blueprints and the outlines of plans on how leagues will resume. And I want to get into the NBA because they were the latest one to make some noise about their returning, what it would look like, and how they would do it. And at least on Tuesday, you had Rockets owner Tillman Fertitta. He was on CNBC, and he was discussing, what a possible return could look like, what the timeline, what the dates could be. And he believes, and he said on CNBC, that he believes the NBA will resume, assuming the virus continues the downturn that it has. It seems like, July is going to be that sweet spot to where the NBA can really, really start, getting players back to training and really start to get the wheels turning to resume in some way, whether it's the regular season or it's the postseason. And Tillman Fertitta made a comment saying about that, as the virus continues to be on the downturn, assuming it does, we should be back up and running and finish the season. And he said, and he believes that regular season games will be played before the playoffs. And while the league still is formally deciding, they haven't, announced a formal plan of how they'll return, whether it's going right to the playoffs, having a playing tournament, having the regular season resume. There's nothing out there yet. But I'll say this, and I'll caution the NBA. They would be foolish, absolutely foolish, to resume the regular season. Instead, they should go right to the playoffs. Whenever the league starts, whenever the season starts, July 1st, July 15th, whenever they want to resume it and feel safe in doing so, they need to go right to the playoffs, and here's why. Number one, the playoffs are where the real money is. Now, if you look at the league advertising revenue, 62% of that league advertising revenue that they make a year, 62% of it comes from the playoffs. So obviously, we talk about, a lot of fans maybe don't pay attention to the NBA in the regular season, kind of get apathetic, and then, they just kind of, are in it for the first few months and then kind of take a downturn until April comes, until the playoffs come. That's when they really get locked back in and are watching every single game every single night. Well, guess what? Advertisers realize that too. They're going to save a lot of their money for the playoffs when they know the ratings are higher, when they know the attention is higher, and they know people are going to be watching. So 62% of the of the yearly league ad revenue is in the playoffs. Can't afford to lose that money. That's a large, significant chunk of ad revenue money that you have to be able to hold on to. So that's number one. Speaking of that, let's put a number. So TV revenue for the playoffs, the NBA rakes in $900 million. So $900 million is lost in TV revenue if the playoffs are canceled or not played. And why would they be canceled? Why would they not be played? Well, this goes into what I'm discussing. Because right now, at least, if the NBA was to resume the regular season, there's a major risk, and there's more teams there that you could risk getting players sick. And if the coronavirus spreads league-wide to where 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 full teams can't play, well, guess what? The leagues are going to get canceled. So right now, the big question and the main motivation for the league resuming to play regular season games is so that these regional sports networks, their regular season contracts could be fulfilled. And the magic number, if you've seen or not aware at least, is 70 games. That's really what these regional sports networks, whether it's MSG here in New York, whether it's Spectrum Sports Network out in Los Angeles, whatever locally television network you watch to watch your favorite team locally. Well, those TV providers have contracts, and that contract usually is for 70 games in the regular season. So right now, the NBA is really trying to get as close to that number as possible, so obviously they lose less money. But this is why I think those contracts shouldn't be stressed about too much, and really, again, the TV revenue, which is $900 million, and the league ad revenue, which is 62% of that league ad revenue comes from the playoffs, it should be important to realize this. Settlements still could be made, right? Let's say, for example, I was looking at the Knicks schedule earlier today. They played 64 games on MSG this year. So that means they have to play 6 more games in order to reach that 70 mark threshold. A team like the Celtics, they played 54 games on NBC Sports Boston. So they have, obviously a long ways to go. They have about 16 games or so to make up in order to reach that 70-game threshold. Now, to me, it doesn't make any sense if you're going to play these games just to get to that 70-game mark. I think you can make settlements, which is when everything I've read so far, that doesn't seem to be off the table. The NBA wants to go to these regional sports networks and say, listen, we can't resume the regular season. The playoffs are too costly in order to risk missing. So we'll settle here. We owed you, 14 games on, for this team. Maybe, we'll pay a 7. Obviously, everyone right now is suffering with the pandemic and the coronavirus. This is something that we didn't see coming. Obviously, it's not ideal, but we're all suffering. We'll give you 7 games. You can make settlements in order to fix this issue to make sure you don't lose league revenue next year and you don't lose a chunk of it this year. And I'll throw this out there, too. I'll throw one caveat in. Let's just say that's not a non-starter, right? The Celtics, let's say, play 54 games like I just mentioned, NBC Sports Boston. They want to get as close to that 70 number as possible, right? So they didn't want to pay 16 games out to NBC Sports Boston. Maybe they were like, all right, I'd rather pay 10. You can play regular season games between playoff teams. I'm for that. My whole thing is you got to only allow 16 teams when the league resumes, when play resumes, into the bubble, which we'll discuss in a second here. So you can play regular season games if you want between all the playoff teams that are going to qualify. But you cannot bring all 30 teams back, run through the rest of the regular season where, again, some teams are playing about 15 to 18 games each per team, depending on, again, what their schedule is. So it's still a decent amount of games that have to get played. So you can play regular season games if you want, but only limit those regular season games to playoff teams. So, example, the Celtics would be in this mix. Let's say Boston plays 10 games on NBC Sports Network. All right, you're at 64. Now you're only playing NBC Sports Boston, let's say 6 or 7 games that you weren't able to fulfill that contract. Because this is why. This is the main reason. Players are going to get sick. Adam Silver said this when he was on a call with the players a few weeks ago. He said, quote, no decision will be risk-free, end quote. And he's right. Until there's a vaccine, until there's an antidote, you risk going out there and getting sick. It's why baseball, they have the same issue. Hockey, the NFL, all have the same issue. There's no guarantee that players won't get sick. So how can you mitigate the risk as much as possible, and how can you prevent the spread as much as possible? So right now, at least the NBA, that their main plan right now, and at least what they're trying to discuss, planning obviously ton of testing, possibly daily, possibly twice daily, again, to make sure that they identify sick players as soon as possible to prevent the spread. And they're not right now, at least, planning on stopping the league if a player gets sick. Maybe you hear some rumors that maybe it'll be a day or two, but it's going to be quick. They're not going to quarantine for 2 weeks. So the league is not going to get shut down like we already saw when one player gets sick and Rudy Gobert. So if they're resuming, they are going to go full throttle. They're going to go through with this, and really, unless maybe entire teams get sick and the entire league gets sick, that's really the only thing seeming right now that will stop the league from playing a full season. So speaking of which, so if they're going to resume, it's going to be, as we see, in 1 or 2 quote-unquote bubble cities. Right now, at least some reports coming out yesterday, Disney World is the front runner to be the main location. So every team that's going to resume play, that's going to be playing the rest of the season, will go to Disney World. They'll train there. They'll have conditioning. They'll have training camp, and then they will resume however they want to resume, regular season, postseason, at Disney World. But guess what? So if you're going to put every team in one city, doesn't it make the most sense to shrink the pool as much as possible so that there's less players, less coaches, less training staff that are out there that could possibly get sick and spread the virus? So to me, you look at that. 16 teams is way easier to test, to identify players getting sick, and again, to prevent the disease from spreading. It's so much easier to keep 16 teams safe compared to 30 teams. I mean, you basically double the workforce and the amount of people that are there. So if you can keep it as small as possible, you can, again, really limit yourself and not stretching yourself out too far to where you are only worrying about 16 teams, 12 players in each team, plus coaches, plus staff. It's so much easier to me, in my mind, to keep 16 teams healthy than it is to 30 teams. So again, that goes back to my point. If they have to play some regular season games, do it with just the playoff teams. Top 8 in each league right now. All right, bring them to Orlando. Maybe have the East play the West so that there's no competitive disadvantage to where the Celtics are playing the Raptors, let's say, and you look at the seeding. Okay, those two are probably going to line up to play a first round series. Well, obviously they're not going to give you anything away, so maybe the game isn't as good, or maybe the stars don't even play, and in that way they can't get the rust off. Play East versus West. Have the Celtics play, the Mavericks, and then have them play the Jazz, and have them play the Lakers for 5, 6, 7, 10 games if they want. However many games that they want to play in the regular season, kind of get as close to 70 as possible. Because guess what? The bad teams, they're not on national TV a lot. So guess what? They don't have a lot of games to make up. Like I said, the Knicks aren't on national TV a lot. They played 65 games, 64 games on MSG. So they only have 4 or 5 games that they're not going to deliver the contract on. So if you got to settle, it's not that expensive compared to a team like the Celtics, like I said, who's played 54 games on their local TV provider. So limit the amount of people that are going to get sick and going to get exposed. That's why, to me, making sure and going right to the playoffs and only worrying about 16 teams makes the most sense. And finally, if there is concern or if there is a hope that you want to try to make this season as normal as possible, meaning you're going to try to play as close to 82 games as possible, you want to have the full playoff bracket play out, fine. But if you're worried that, a team will get in the playoffs and maybe didn't deserve to get in the playoffs, or a team didn't get a fair shake in making the playoffs, and maybe they'll put an asterisk on the NBA Finals, it's not worth it. Because you look at right now, especially the bottom of each conference, the East is pretty much locked in. For the most part, you have the Magic and the Nets, 7-8 are fighting for positioning. But for the most part, I believe it's the Wizards are 5 games out. They're not going to make the playoffs. And if they do, they're going to get swept in the first round. The West now is interesting, and it's highly contested. You have currently the Grizzlies in 8th place. But you have the Pelicans, you have the Blazers, you have the Kings, you have the Spurs, all right there, all battling for that 8th seed. And they're all within 4 games. So it's highly contested, don't get me wrong. But does it really matter, honestly, who the 8th seed is? Since, back in 2003, since the first round went to 7 games, there's been 4, 7, or 8 seeds total that have won a first-round series since 2003. It doesn't happen that often. And now is not the year, with all the circumstances that are going on, to try to make sure that these teams get an equal shot at making the playoffs. Whether it's the Grizzlies, whether it's the Pelicans, the Spurs, the Kings. Does anyone really think these teams are going to beat the Lakers? I don't. So there's no real point in trying to resume the league in order to make sure, give these teams a fair chance of making the playoffs. You had 80% of the season to do so. Couldn't do it. Congrats to the Grizzlies. If it was me, I would put them in the playoffs right now and then have them lose in 4 or 5 games to the Lakers. So at least when I'm looking at the landscape right now of how the coronavirus is in this country, again, the spread is still pretty easy. Bringing back all 30 teams to play 15, 17 regular season games in order to fulfill those regional sports network contracts just to save a few extra bucks, to me, is not worth putting the playoffs in jeopardy, which is the real moneymaker. 62% of league ad revenue for the entire year comes from the playoffs. And if the playoffs aren't played, $900 million in TV revenue is lost, is gone just like that, in a league that is bleeding cash right now. You have to protect your cash cow. You have to protect your baby. That is the playoffs. So cut the league in half, bring 16 teams down to Orlando, to Disney World, to play in order to keep them as safe as possible and to ensure that the playoffs are played in full. In full. That's what you have to make sure about, because right now, again, with how much money that the league is losing, you'd be absolutely foolish to do anything to put the playoffs at risk, because guess what? If you resume the regular season, play outside in the Knicks or the Cavaliers get sick, spreads it to his team, you don't catch it till after the game. They play, let's say, the Raptors or the Celtics or the Pacers. And all of a sudden, 5 or 6 Pacers players get sick, and now all of a sudden they can't play as a team. There's not enough players to play for 2 weeks. What happens? That's the thing the NBA has to worry about. 1 or 2 players, they can survive. They can just keep on going, which they already said they're going to keep on going. I'm not sure what the league can do contingency-wise if an entire team or teams get sick to where they can't play for at least 2 weeks. That is something that NBA does not want to get into or not have to worry about, which is why bringing back all 30 teams, way too risky. Start with the playoffs, go right to the playoffs, bring 16 teams down. If you want to play regular season, fine. Play a regular season, 5, 10 games, only with the teams that are in the playoffs, that qualify for the playoffs. Because, again, 16 is way easier to keep safe than 30. So I'm curious, would the NBA be making a mistake in your mind if they don't go straight to the playoffs? Would you want to see them resume the regular season? If you're a Knicks fan, do you want to see the Knicks, the godforsaken Knicks, play 15 more games on MSG, or do you want, just to go back to the playoffs? Because I think it would be absolutely foolish for the NBA to do anything right now but go right to the playoffs. So get your thoughts, whether it's on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, whether it's on Twitter at WWSRN_radio. We'll get your thoughts on whether it'd be smart or foolish for the NBA to go right to the playoffs. And when we come back also, speaking of foolishness, the NFL has a major issue, a major issue, and that is the lack of diversity with coaches and the front office. The NFL is trying to implement rules, and the latest one was having a draft boost essentially tied to minority hiring in the front office or with the coaches. I'll tell you what the bigger issue is in the NFL than just lack of diversity when the Morning Boys Ryan Hickey return right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
Welcome back into the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It is the Morning Boys with Ryan Hickey right here on a Thursday morning. Appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully everyone's having a great Thursday. If you missed the start of the show, hope is finally in the air. It feels good to actually have and be talking about the potential return of some live sports, the possibility of that we can actually have a summer filled with Major League Baseball, with NBA playoff games, with NASCAR races, with golf tournaments, with horse racing, and especially in the states that are hit hardest, New York here and then California as well, to hear them, start opening their doors to professional sports coming back without fans, obviously, but still, it's a major step that really, at least for me, provides some hope and really at least gives me a boost, because I feel like anytime you turn on the news, it's all negative for whatever reason. Well, I know for the reason, but it's always negative, I should say. And sports has provided that outlet, has provided that escape, and at least to finally see that possibly returning is enough for me to get excited. And hopefully, again, they can do it safely, do it smartly, because I think the last thing anyone needs right now is to have some hope, have the thought process and the expectation that the leagues will resume, only to either not get off the ground or unfortunately have to shut down midway through because they weren't able to contain the virus as they so thought. So fingers crossed that if they can resume, they do it safely. The players aren't at risk, the coaches aren't at risk, anyone else involved, the hotel staff, the cooks, the trainers. There's so many people that go into all these leagues resuming that hopefully that everyone can stay safe and we can all enjoy and rally together watching sports return as well. So we started at least talking about with the NBA possibly resuming. There was a thought. You had Tim Fertitta going CNBC, the Rockets, Houston Rockets owner, saying that if they do resume, assuming again the virus continues to take the downturn, if they do resume, he believes regular season games will be played. And I think that's a major mistake, that they should go right to the playoffs, because if you bring all 30 teams back, if you risk, and the longer you play your season without going to the playoffs, all you're doing is risking players getting sick. And if a ton of players get sick or full teams get sick, guess what? You're going to have to shut down the league, and probably it's going to be a hard time to resume. It's going to be a very hard time to resume. So that's why I think they should go right to the playoffs. 16 teams is a lot easier to keep healthy and keep safe compared to 30 teams. And if, let's just say, God forbid, players or teams do get sick, if you need to take a 2-week break, it's a lot easier to do so when you're in the middle of the playoffs than it is, before the playoffs even start, because there's a lot of money, a lot of ad money, a lot of TV money that's tied to the playoffs. That's sure, the NBA's lost a lot of money already, and they can't afford to lose this huge chunk that comes and is associated with the playoffs. That's why I think it would be smart for the NBA to go right to the playoffs. If you have any thoughts, if you agree, disagree, throw it on Worldwide Sports Network on Facebook, comment there underneath the show, tweet us at WWSR_radio. If you want to tweet me personally, if you're very upset, you just want to fire one off directly, Ryan_Hickey, number 3, or comment on the app. Worldwide Sports Radio Network on Android, WWSRN on iOS. The app is a one-stop shop for everything. So easy to do. All the articles, we already just wrote an article this week discussing why you should side with the players over the MLB owners when it comes to a financial battle of resuming play. All the shows that myself, Errol Marks do, all those shows can be found there on the app as well. So written content, visual and audio content, and also YouTube clips that are, our great producer Speedy PD cuts up and puts up of every show. If you, in case you missed a segment, clips the show, you can go back to YouTube and find the specific segment that you want, all right there at the palm of your hand on the app, WWSRN on iOS or Worldwide Sports Radio Network if you have Android. So I want to get into the NFL because last week, Friday News Dump, Jim Trott of the NFL media reported that the NFL had a proposal on the table that was going to be voted on Tuesday that would say if a team hires a minority coach or a minority general manager, they can move up in the draft, assuming that he's still hired on the staff. So let's say if you hire a minority head coach to fill your opening, if he's there going into his second year, your team can move up 6 slots in the third round. So let's say if you have the number 6 pick in the third round, guess what? If you have a minority coach and he's still there after 1 year, you can move up to get the first pick in the third round. If you have a minority general manager, you can move up 10 selections in the third round. And if you hit you go the double dip, if you go both a minority head coach and general manager, you can move up 16 spots in the draft in 1 year. And again, there's some incentives as well as to, trying to hire minority coaches. And while the application, I didn't get to this, but while the application I didn't think was smart enough, I mean, this is a real problem that has to be addressed, and I appreciate and applaud the NFL for at least trying to take steps in order to address this. But to me now, thinking about this, seeing that, the proposal was tabled so the owners even get to vote upon it, so it's not going to be instituted this year. And Roger Goodell said in tabling it that they're trying to, this was basically a start, right? This is the first idea, and he thinks that by tabling it, they'll have some other ideas that can improve this rule, while maybe, not making it have such a major impact competitively. Again, moving up 16 spots in a draft is major. But, have some different, let's say, rewards for going and promoting diversity. And kind of, reading a lot, listening a lot, my main takeaway is that the NFL does have a huge disparity and a major lack of diversity. But even more than that, the NFL needs, they lack open-mindedness more than anything else. They need more open-mindedness when it comes to head coaches, when it comes to general managers, when it comes to ownership. Open-mindedness is lacking more than diversity. Here's what I mean by that. So, you can do whatever you want. The Rooney Rule was implemented back in 2003, and that rule states that if you have a head coaching opening, you have to interview at least one minority candidate. Before, there's no rule, so you could interview whoever you want. Now you can still hire whoever you want, but you have to make sure that in doing so, a minority coach is in the process. That was implemented back in 2003. 17 years later, guess what? Nothing really has changed. It's helped a little bit. The Steelers obviously benefited from it in hiring Mike Tomlin, a coach that they said that they never would have thought, or at least been would have interviewed, besides this rule. So, sure, it's helped in one or two cases, but as you can see, there's still a major problem here. And this latest proposal of incentivizing minority hires, sure, again, it's another step. It's a little bit more of extreme of a step, but how much could it really help? Because guess what? At the end of the day, you can't force general managers to hire a head coach they don't want to hire. You can't force owners to hire either a general manager or a head coach they don't want to hire. And if they're not comfortable with hiring someone, they're not going to do it. So if teams want to hire diverse candidates, they'll do so. If they don't want to, they'll skirt the rules. They'll do whatever they have to do to make sure they're being quote unquote compliant. They're not going to hire a minority coach if they don't want to. Because guess what? It doesn't take diversity in order to promote open-mindedness, in order to promote diversity. And here's what I mean by that. There are plenty of examples already of teams who are open-minded, that want to be open-minded, that have already promoted diversity. You had the 49ers hire Katie Sowers, the first full-time offensive woman assistant. Right? She was profiled greatly leading up to the Super Bowl. And you hope that her hiring and her success with the 49ers opens doors for other women. The Redskins just this past offseason hired Jennifer King. She's the first minority female to be hired full-time on staff. Congrats to the Redskins for doing so. Bruce Arians has been really one of the leaders in promoting diversity and opening doors and using his open-mindedness to hire the best candidate no matter who they are. He has Byron Leftwich as his offensive coordinator, Todd Bowles as his defensive coordinator, and he's already hired 2 full-time female coaches. So Bruce Arians is a great example of someone who he's going to hire the best candidate. Doesn't matter where they come from, who they are, what their experience is. If their qualifications match up, he's going to hire them. And I want to read a quote from Bruce Arians because I think this is perfect, and this really sums up. This was him talking last March, so back in March 2019, when the news of him hiring the 2 female coaches came out. He said, quote, "It's time, and I'll be happy when it's not news anymore. That's where it should be heading. That's what we need. The fact that their gender is different, who gives a bleep?" End quote. I mean, Bruce sums it up perfectly. It doesn't matter, the background, the gender, the race that they come from. These owners, these general managers, these coaches should be hired on their merit and should be hired because they're the best fit. Guess what? Teams that want to promote this already are doing so. Teams that aren't going to do so. If you have teams that are uncomfortable in hiring a minority candidate as a head coach, as an assistant coach, as a general manager, guess what? No matter what rule you put in there, no matter how much incentives you give them to hire someone from a different background, if they don't feel comfortable, they're not going to do it. So guess what? These hires, unfortunately, are only going to be limited to those who think outside the box, which, if you look at the NFL generally, it's rare. Think about it. How rare is it that we see teams, organizations, coaches, players, general managers really go outside the box, really go down the road less traveled? So many teams are afraid to take a risk. So many teams rarely go out on a limb. I mean, it really is a copycat league. If you just look at it from strictly an X's and O's perspective, right? Now, you have the proliferation and you have the quarterback position alone changed so vastly, so differently from even 10 years ago, to where you, for the longest time, had a pro-style quarterback that was someone who was big, who was tall, that could go under center, that could make all the throws you want. He wasn't someone that came from the Big 12. It wasn't someone that was small, that was athletic, that was fast, that relied on their legs in order to make plays. That, for the longest time, wasn't going to work in the NFL. Well, guess what? Teams started realizing eventually, once they saw it happen, that, hey, you know what? We can win games when our quarterback is fast. We can win games when our quarterback uses his legs. We can win games when we are strictly out of the shotgun. And now what's happening? You see more and more teams drafting these kind of spread offense, athletic quarterbacks to be their guys. Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray. And you are starting to see it more and more often now, where the prototype of a quarterback is basically the best athlete. Strong arm, mobile, can run the ball, athletic out of the pocket, primarily out of the shotgun. Now it's what all teams are looking for. And this is the same thing with coaches. Right? For the long time, you see Sean McVay get hired. He has success with the Rams. A lot of people scoff at it. All of a sudden, now what happens? Everyone tries to look for the Sean McVay clone. Who's the young, hotshot offensive assistant? Who can we get that mirrors Sean McVay? How can we be like the Rams and do what they did? So one team in the Rams steps out, goes on a limb, hires a young guy who's, 32 at the time of Sean McVay's hiring. And now all of a sudden, with that little experience, he takes the Rams, turns them into an offensive juggernaut. And now all of a sudden teams are desperate, whether they're hiring his quarterback coaches, his offensive coaches, and now the main prerequisite for a head coaching job is, what have you done on offense? Are you a quarterback coach, offensive coordinator? How young are you? We need to get the next young hotshot. But guess what? When teams pigeonhole themselves into thinking like this or checking some sort of box where, okay, the league is going this way, so we have to make sure that we have a guy who fits this. When teams do that, they rarely find success. I'm going to read you a few names here. Tell me one category that these all fit in. You have Pete Carroll, John Harbaugh, Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, Tony Dungy. You know what all these guys have in common? They are all from the defensive side or special team side of the ball. And you know what they all were? The best candidate for the job. Didn't matter, what side of the ball they coached. Didn't matter what race they were or what teams they coached before. They were the best man for the job, and they were hired because of that. And then guess what? All 5 of those guys won Super Bowls. Pete Carroll, John Harbaugh, Belichick, Tomlin, Dungy. All Super Bowl coaches. All have their teams consistently as contenders year in and year out that are still in the league. At least with Carroll, Harbaugh, Belichick, and Tomlin. Right? Every year we have the Steelers, the Patriots, the Ravens, the Seahawks. Always in the mix. Always in the playoff hunt. So that's why I'm skeptical that these new Rooney rules, which now were expanded on Tuesday, so that 2 minority candidates have to be hired for every head coach opening. You have 1 minority or female candidate have to be interviewed for every coordinator, offensive and defensive coordinator position, and front office position. So I'm honestly skeptical that this will change anything, because guess what? We've seen in the past with the Rooney Rule, all of a sudden it's increased a little bit. Teams, if they don't want to hire minority and diverse coaches, aren't going to do so. It starts at the top with owners. If they're not open-minded, if they pigeonhole themselves to just hiring one sort of candidate or want this specific qualification, whether it's offensive coordinator, whether it's a quarterback coach, nothing's going to change. So until these owners really start, and again, it starts on the top, until these owners become more open-minded, start actually thinking outside the box, start willing to go down the path that's less traveled, I hate to say it, the lack of diversity in the coaching and in the front office ranks, it's not going to change. It's crappy to say, but it's not going to change, because the NFL, if anything, doesn't promote open-mindedness, doesn't take a risk unless someone else doesn't have success. And these owners are so risk-averse, so they're not going to do it. So that's why I'm fortunately very skeptical that these rule changes could do anything, because guess what? At the end of the day, everything I read came back to the same conclusion. You can't force owners to hire someone they don't want to hire. You can't force general managers to hire someone they don't want to hire. So they're set in their ways. If they have one sort of idea of a coach that they want leading their team, no matter what rule you put in, what rewards you give teams, unfortunately, nothing's going to change. And it's unfortunate to say, it's really bad for the game to say. But you need these owners, again, starting from the top, to be more open-minded take more risk, and again, see the bigger picture, think outside of the box, than just trying to check so-and-so box. So I'm very skeptical that these new Rooney rules, again, trying to add to the already existing rules with more minority coaches interviewing for head coaching jobs, with more minority coaches interviewing for coordinator positions, I'm skeptical it's going to change. So I'm curious, any of these new rules, they could help promote the lack of diversity in coaching the front office? I hope so. I really do. But I just keep coming back to the fact that you can't force and push these owners to hire people they don't want to hire. And guess what? These owners, a lot of these same owners, have been in power for a while. And guess what? This issue of diversity has been around for a while. So when you implement the Rooney Rule back in 2003, and 17 years later, not much has changed, do you expect the same group of ownership to all of a sudden change their ways, wake up one day and be like, wow, you know what? The lack of diversity is very concerning. We should really do something. No, they're going to hire who they want to hire. Teams that already are thinking outside the box are doing so. Like I said, the 49ers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially led by Bruce Arians, they're hiring the best people they can have for the job, no matter what their background, their gender, their race. So teams that want to think outside the box and hire diversity are already doing so. They don't need incentives. They don't need rules in order to do so. The rules are there for those who don't want to. And in the end, when you can't force these owners and these general managers to hire people they don't want to hire, nothing's going to change. So I'm pretty skeptical myself. I hope something could change, but at least right now, I can't think of anything unless it's literally, legitimately ownership change that's going to help promote diversity in the coaching and front office. So I'd love to get your thoughts. Maybe you have an idea that I'm not thinking of that could help really promote. I'd love to hear that, whether it's on Facebook, World at Sports Radio Network. If you want to tweet us, WWSRN_radio. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this. And when we come back, so we're discussing hope, right? We're discussing these leagues coming back. Well, if they do come back, it's going to be without fans. For how long? Who knows? But at least right now, for baseball and for the NBA, it seems no fans the rest of the season. The NFL, it seems we're going to have no fans at least to start. And Fox and Joe Buck made an interesting comment of what they plan on doing if there's no fans in the stands to enhance their broadcast. Love to get your thoughts on this would be a good idea or not. When the Morning Boys, Ryan Hickey, return right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
Welcome back into the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It is the Morning Boys with Ryan Hickey right here on this gorgeous, this hopeful Thursday. Hope everyone's doing great. We do appreciate you tuning in. We just kind of finished up and wrapping up here our thoughts on why the NFL, they have a lack of open-mindedness problem more than a lack of diversity problem. Because guess what? The less open-minded owners are, the less willing they are to go outside the box, hire someone maybe with a different background they're not familiar with. The lack of diversity is only going to increase. It's not going to decrease. And I'm just scrolling through Twitter here during the break, and I saw a great quote. Zach Gelb of CBS Sports Radio had Tony Dungy on the show yesterday. And Tony Dungy was saying how he believes his skin color was an impediment when he was interviewing. He had owners asking him who his staff was going to be, what his players would look like. And apparently Tony had an owner tell him, quote, "I don't know if we're ready for that yet," end quote. So this is my point exactly. This is what I'm talking about. No matter what rules, no matter what incentives you put in the NFL to incentivize owners, to incentivize general managers to go through and hire minority candidates, if they're not open to it, if they're not already open to it, I should say, it's not going to happen. You just had an owner tell Tony Dungy, quote, "I don't know if we're ready for that yet," end quote. I'm talking about what his staff and what his players would look like. And it's not physical, or it's not body type. I can promise you that, what they look like on the football field. It's what they look like off the field. That's insane. But guess what? That's lack of open-mindedness. And nothing's going to change if owners continue to have, can kind of pigeonhole themselves into what type or what a prototype NFL coach is supposed to look like, or an NFL GM is supposed to look like. That open-mindedness is the reason why there's lack of diversity in the NFL, and no rules, no incentives, at least to me, are going to change that, unfortunately. And again, it starts at the top, and it starts with trying to change that. Different thinkers in there, people with different backgrounds, different experiences, so they can look at things differently. And again, in a copycat league, you hope that maybe one or two great hires of minority candidates can really get the wheels going the other way. But I'm very skeptical because, again, it starts at the top, starts with open-mindedness, and that is something that the NFL does not have a lot of. So like I said, so if you get again, love to get your thoughts either on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, on Twitter, WWSRN_radio. The NFL broadcasts, right? We hope that there's an NFL season, and we hope it's a full NFL season when it comes around in the fall. Now the question is, what is it going to look like? And we know, at least right now, we believe that there's going to be no fans in the stands. For how long that lasts, we'll see. But at least right now, it's interesting because Joe Buck was on Andy Cohen Radio on SiriusXM last week, and he was discussing Fox's plan, the TV plan, for how they're going to approach the broadcast, assuming there's no fans in the stands. And he had an interesting answer. This is Joe Buck on what Fox is planning to do without any fans in the stands.
Going into this season coming up, and that comes with a huge asterisk, and hopefully there is a season, there's probably going to be a season in doing games with no fans, which will be difficult. I think Fox and these networks have to put crowd noise under us to make it as normal a viewing experience at home.
You think they'll do that?
I do. Yeah, I think they'll do it. I know. In fact, I know they'll do it, and they are to the point now
that's the conversation right now.
It's pretty much a done deal. I think whoever's going to be at that control is going to have to be really good at their job and be realistic with how a crowd would react depending on what just happened on the field. So it's really important. And then on top of that, they're going to they're looking at ways to put virtual fans in the stands. So when you see a wide shot, it looks like the stadium's jam-packed.
So you hear Joe Buck there. Talks about, with no fans in the stands, their plan at Fox is to pump in fake crowd noise, put it underneath the broadcast, and even, as you heard him say too, maybe enhance it if a big play happens for the home team to make it seem, again, like there's fans in the stands. And I'll be honest, this seems like an awful idea. Put fake noise, fake crowd noise underneath the broadcast seems absolutely like an awful idea. And to me, it's only going to hurt the broadcast, not enhance it, and here's why. First of all, we all know it's fake. Right? I feel like a lot of us, we all get annoyed when we know they're trying to fake us out. When it's not authentic, it doesn't have the same effect. Right? We're watching a game, and it's 100,000 people in the stadium, and they're going crazy on a third down when the opposition is backed up deep, or if the home team gets a big touchdown late. That noise is awesome because it's real. It's authentic. You can feel it. Because you see all those fans going crazy. You hear the place shaking. When you have that same noise but no fans in the stand, it's going to feel weird. It's not going to feel authentic. It's only going to me at least, decrease the broadcast, because when it's fake, when it's repurposed, and when it's not authentic, how is it supposed to feel real? How are you supposed to really get excited when you hear, supposedly 80,000 fans going crazy, but you look and you see there's no fans in the stands? So I don't think it's going to enhance the broadcast of hearing, a crowd go crazy on a big third down or a big touchdown, because you're sitting in your living room and you see 80,000 seats empty. And I actually think no crowd and having no crowd noise could actually enhance the broadcast. So a few weeks ago, the UFC returned for the first time. They were the first real, sport in the U.S. to resume. They had no fans. And I was watching some of the prelims, and it's interesting because without any fans, they didn't try to pipe in any crowd noise. So it was just silent. It was just the fighters, and all you hear is the punches that are thrown, you hear the kicks that are thrown, and you really hear everything that is discussed in the octagon. And I thought that actually brought me in more than if you hear a crowd going crazy and hear a crowd reacting to a big kick or a big punch. And I think that's going to translate well to football, basketball, and baseball. If you're watching a football game, you can hear, and if there's no crowd noise, right, and you can hear audibly the hits on the field. You can hear a big hit. Or you can hear, a wide receiver talking trash to a defensive back. Or hearing players just get really excited and screaming and yelling after big plays made. I think that would translate better. I think that would translate really well on television because it gives you an angle, it gives you a peer into these players that you never see before. Right? We pick up some things on those microphones that you hear that maybe shouldn't be said, or some things are louder than the actual crowd noise. But to hear really a full NFL game with no crowd noise, but hear these players talking adjustments, talking trash, you hear a big hit. I think it would translate well. I'm not the only one who believes this. You have Steph Curry. He also is in favor of this for the NBA, saying that the league should go a step further, mic up the players, provide a new level that's really never been seen or heard before on a normal broadcast, and I'm totally with him. Right? Could you imagine if, we had players mic'd up in real time, and I know the NFL already does this, but if you can hear them in real time or even maybe listen more or get a deeper angle, because all of a sudden a lot that's usually lost in the crowd noise, all of a sudden you can hear now. That could be great for the broadcast. So I'm all in favor of having no crowd noise under, because I think hearing those noises, hearing the hits, hearing the adjustments that are talked about, hearing even the trash talk that's being talked about on the field, I think it'd be great. I think fans would love that. I know I would love that. I think media would love it. I think it would really give fans, I think give the leagues a new angle to really let you see these players like you've never seen them before. And I just think fake crowd noise would ruin that. And finally, too, when you kind of heard Joe Buck talking about this, from the way he was describing it, it's going to sound like someone's going to be in charge of the crowd noise, meaning that, okay, it's going to be low, maybe second down, the home team has the ball, and so there's really not too much going on. There's maybe a lull in the crowd, and then all of a sudden, if a big play happens, the home team gets a sack on third down, the home team gets a touchdown, they're going to have to adjust and raise the crowd noise depending on the outcome. So I feel like that's going to be tough to do when you're in charge of judging what a crowd is supposed to react to, what a crowd is supposed to be like. I feel like it's going to make it worse. If you have, it's bad enough to have basically just one level of crowd noise underneath and basically just have it as background noise during these broadcasts. But to have someone then in charge of basically assuming what a crowd's going to be like, to raise it when a touchdown happens, or maybe lower it if a bad play happens, or maybe even pipe in boos, I just don't think it's going to feel the same. I don't think it's going to be a good idea, and I don't think it's going to translate well to these NFL broadcasts. I'll get your thoughts. I mean, is this an idea that you'd be into, right? Would you be into, you think it's a good idea, instead of having silence, which that's what the UFC was. When I was watching the UFC, if the announcers weren't talking, all you heard was, again, the fighters. I think it's even interesting, too, because during those fights, you had one of the fighters discuss that he won the fight because he heard the feedback that one of the analysts was giving. So these guys are close to the ring, obviously. The analyst was discussing, it was Daniel Cormier, a former fighter actually, was discussing what one of the fighters had to do in order if he wanted to get the win. And basically he heard that and adjusted his game plan midway through the fight, and that's the way he won. Could you imagine if, you have Tracy Wolfson on the sidelines reporting either an injury or an adjustment, and one of the other players on the other team hears it? I think that'd be cool. See them adjust in real time and then credit them after the game, crediting CBS for helping them make some mid-game adjustments. I think it would translate well with no crowd noise. Actually, you hear what goes on the field. You hear the trash talk. You hear the hits. You hear the adjustments. And just really the chatter that goes on during a normal game on the sidelines, I think it would translate well. So I think if the NFL went more, or I should say if Fox went more into the player sound, into the sideline sound, I think it would translate better than having fake crowd noise underneath the broadcast in order to try to mimic what a full stadium would sound like. So let's get your thoughts. Should it be a good idea for the broadcasts to pipe in some fake crowd noise to make it feel more authentic? I don't, but I'd love to get your thoughts if you think and hear why you think it would be more authentic. So again, Worldwide Sports Radio Network on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, WWSRN on Twitter, or Ryan_Hickey and the number 3 on Twitter. So get your thoughts on whether it'd be a good idea for broadcast to pump in some fake crowd noise during NFL games if we make it feel more authentic. When we come back, we'll stick with the NFL. Most intriguing teams list, numbers 16 to 13. So we're creeping into the top half of the most watchable, the most exciting, the most intriguing, most storylines surrounding the 32 teams in the NFL. Numbers 16 to 13 when the Morning Boys Ryan Hickey return right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
All right, I guess we are back. Huh. All right. The commercial just didn't want to play anymore. That was weird. All right, so we are back here. It is the Worldwide Sports Network with your host, Ryan Hickey. It is the Morning Boys, so we will roll unexpectedly right into the most intriguing teams, numbers 16 through 13 for the 2020 NFL season. That was very weird. As you see, technology really cooperating here as we are crushing it, so we do apologize for that. But we are back up and running with you on the Worldwide Sports Network. So, as we were saying, we have 2020 Apocalypse coming in about 20 minutes, so we have our next participant. If you want to be a game show contestant, let me know. Reach out. We'll get you on the list and get you on as soon as possible. But, like I said, numbers 16 through 13 here for the NFL's most intriguing teams of 2020. At number 16, the Indianapolis Colts, my team. A lot of question marks here, and it's interesting because, at least for one, the main question is going to be, how much does Philip Rivers have left? I think that's what everyone's watching. Can he, go back to his form from 2 years ago when the Chargers were 12-4 and going to the playoffs, or is he more of what he was last year, which was just washed up, not good? I know the Colts are betting on that Philip Rivers has still more in the tank from 2 years ago. I'm skeptical. I'm very skeptical. This is my team, and I did not like the Philip Rivers signing at all. So I'm interested to see how much does he have left, but that is a major question mark because I really do like the roster the Colts have. I thought Michael Pittman Jr., Jonathan Taylor were two great draft picks. Their offensive line is really, really good, top 5 in the NFL. The defensive line is improving, and they added DeForest Buckner to that defensive line, so they're really starting to kind of round into form. I like their defense. They're young, but they're growing. So I really like the overall roster of the Colts. I think they're a really, they're playoff caliber. But they're only going to make the playoffs if Philip Rivers, again, still has some in the tank from 2 years ago. And if he plays anything like he does last year, the roster isn't good enough to carry him. And right now the NFL is not built to when you have a quarterback that's not good to carry them to the playoffs. So I think they'll contend for the AFC crown. I think they'll be right in the mix with the Texans to make the playoffs. Again, the big question is going to come down to how much does Philip Rivers have left. And thus, that's a big question we'll be watching all season long, which is why I have the Colts at number 16. Number 15, the New Orleans Saints. Now, part of the reason why I have them lower, basically right in the right dead center, is because I do feel like they're a known quantity and a known commodity, right? Because think about it. We know that the Saints are going to be good. They have one of the best rosters in football. They've been nothing but winners with Drew Brees and Sean Payton. So I think we can almost pencil them in for worst case scenario 10-6, right? So you already know what's going to happen. You know the Saints are going to have an explosive offense. You know their defense is going to continue to grow and play really well. The big question for me is, can Drew Brees make it through a full season? And full season meaning finish strong and go to the playoffs. Because the last 2 years, we've seen Drew Brees peter off. 2 years ago in 2018, we saw him really kind of hit a brick wall the last few games of the season. And we saw it in the playoffs. He struggled. He was not good in their playoff win over the Eagles, and he was not good in their playoff loss to the Rams. Obviously, we all know the biggest storyline coming out of that game. But even last year, Drew Brees breaks his thumb, misses 5 games. That almost helped Drew Brees because that kind of gave him a break in the middle of the season, have him came refreshed when he came back. He was strong. And again, even though I think that he petered off when we saw in that Vikings playoff game, he looked tired. He looked like he was out of energy, out of gas. I think that's the biggest question with the Saints is how much gas does Drew Brees have left in the tank? I mean, I think at this point, it's safe to assume that this is Drew Brees' last season. I know he signed a 2-year deal, but between what Sean Payton accidentally slipping up and saying this is the last year for Drew Brees, you having him already taking a broadcasting job with NBC, I think this is it. This is Drew Brees' so-called last dance. Can they win a Super Bowl? Can they make a run at it? So, to me, that's what I'm going to be watching all year long. I think for the most part, for 3/4 of the regular season, you're going to know what you're going to get. The Saints are going to score a lot of points. They're going to win a lot of home games. So, for at least to me, when I'm looking at the Saints, I'm not really tuning in seriously to see what they're looking like to the last 4 games of the year. Because I'm watching Drew Brees to see what he looks like. Does he still have enough gas left in the tank? Is he still playing at a high enough level to when they get to the playoffs, he can elevate this team? The last 2 years, he was not able to do that. And I think that's, again, because of the old age. He's 41 years old. He has not been able to drink the fountain of youth that Tom Brady has, at least, a little bit, and finishing season strong. That's at least what I'm watching. Because other than that, we know the Saints are going to be good. And again, this list, if you're just tuning in for the first time, this list is not about ranking teams 32-1 based on how they're going to do in 2020. We've already had some good teams that are going to make the playoffs this season already in the back of the list. I had the Bills, I believe, number 26. I think the Bills are going to make the playoffs. I think the Bills are going to win the division. But it doesn't mean that their style of play is aesthetically pleasing, fun to watch, something that you're going to be constantly watching. This is all about the most intriguing teams, right? Storylines. Are they going to be good? Are they going to be bad? At least to me, that's how this list is going to be ranking. So when every Sunday you're sitting down, you're going to have a few teams that you're going to be always watching, keeping an eye on. I think the Saints, for the most part, won't be one of those teams for the first 3/4 of the season because, again, I think you know what's going to happen. They're going to win a lot of games, tough to beat at home. But can Drew Brees make it through a full season? That's going to be the big question mark. And that's why the Saints are at number 15. At number 14, a team with a lot of question marks that came out of free agency and the draft, and that is the Green Bay Packers. Now, one of the main questions, one of the serious questions we have to watch out is, can Aaron Rodgers improve in year 2, Matt LaFleur? They go 13-3 last year, but I'll be honest, their offense seemed stagnant for most of the year. They weren't exactly a blow-you-away 13-3 team. They arguably were one of the worst 13-3 teams you could ever have because they just kind of petered through. The offense wasn't elite. The defense wasn't elite. They just kind of squeaked by a lot of games, and eventually somehow you wake up and they're 13-3. I think that blowout loss to the 49ers kind of showed you how far away they were from an elite team, from being a serious contender and being a serious Super Bowl contender. So how much can Rodgers improve in year 2, Matt LaFleur? Now he knows the system. Now he knows what's expected. Can he improve? Can he play better? And can the offense look better in year number 2? Are any weapons going to step up? Because guess what? Between the offseason, between the draft, they didn't really do much to improve those weapons. You're going to go with a lot of the receivers that played last year, whether it's Allen Lazard, whether it's, really anyone outside of Devonta Adams, it was just a rotating cast of receivers that were forced to step in because of injury or lack of production. And besides bringing Devin Funchess, they didn't really do much to give Aaron Rodgers any weapons. So I honestly think this year is going to be a toss-up. I have no clue what the Packers are going to be like. They could go 10-6. They can go 6-10. I honestly can't put my finger on it because there's so many holes that weren't addressed. But yet, it feels like they're just coming off a 13-3 year where they feel like they're 1 or 2 pieces away from winning a Super Bowl. So I'm interested to see, how the offense plays, how Aaron Rodgers plays, and more importantly, too, now this is an added drama as well. I don't think it's going to rear its head this year, but you never know, is if Aaron Rodgers struggles or he's getting frustrated with the offense or frustrated with the lack of weapons, how much drama do we see between Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur? I don't think he's going to take it out on Jordan Love, but, with Matt LaFleur, Brian Gutekunst drafting and trading up to draft Jordan Love, they're going to play him sooner rather than later. I told you a few weeks ago, I would be shocked if Aaron Rodgers is on the team past 2021. I think he is this year and he is next year. Then he's gone. I personally believe that I think by year 3, Jordan Love is going to be the starter for the Green Bay Packers. So Aaron Rodgers has 2 years left in Green Bay, this one and next year. I'm interested to see how fed up he is, and if he gets frustrated with Matt LaFleur, if there's drama, if there's trade demands or trade rumors. I think it's something to watch, especially if the Packers go off to a rough start. If they're 1-3, if they're 1-4, that's a team I'm watching every single week because I am watching Aaron Rodgers' body language come off the field. I'm watching how he's interacting with the coaches. Because right now, Aaron Rodgers is a guy who has already claimed publicly to want to play into his 40s, want to be a Packer for life. Well, with drafting Jordan Love, basically the Packers shut the door on that. There's no way, unless Aaron Rodgers takes back and walks back what he said about playing until his 40s, and instead is just content with playing out his contract or playing out until the Packers tell him to retire, and he's fine with that, there's a lot of resentment, I believe, from Aaron Rodgers toward the Packers. And so he's going to be, one unhappy camper, I think, especially if things go off the rails early and the offense isn't what it's supposed to be and isn't developing. So that's why I have the Packers number 14. I think there's so much to watch. There's so many questions and storylines of how their season is going to go and what will the drama be like. We will see, especially the worse off start they get, the more drama I think is going to be cooking in Green Bay. They're a very interesting team that should be watched throughout the 2020 season. And we'll finish up this ranking with number 13, the Los Angeles Rams. I'm really intrigued to see how Sean McVay bounces back, right? 2 years ago, 2018, comes in, they go to the Super Bowl. The Rams were unstoppable. The offense was looking great. Todd Gurley was playing great. Jared Goff's looking like the number 1 pick. You have all these different receivers to throw to. The offense looks great. Well, guess what? The next year, 2019 comes. Todd Gurley is not playing, and he's load managed unofficially because he has tendonitis in his knee. And the Rams are trying to preserve him as much as possible. Jared Goff takes a major aggression, maybe because either the league figured him out or because the weapons weren't as great around him. Injuries also hurt the Rams as well. So I'm interested, what will the Rams look like offensively? Can Jared Goff bounce back to that 2018 version? Can Sean McVay learn from the failure in the Super Bowl, from a rough 2019 season, to bounce back, make adjustments, and get the Rams back to that 2018 level? I'm interested, too, what the defense is going to look like. They lost some significant playmakers in free agency. They lost Corey Littleton. They lost Dante Fowler Jr., a linebacker and a defensive end, that were pretty good for their front seven for the Rams these last few years. And not to mention, too, you look at the division the Rams are in, whether it's the Cardinals, I think are going to be a really spunky, really frisky team. And notice the Cardinals have not been on this list, so they're going to be pretty high in my rankings for teams that I'm watching in 2020. I think the Cardinals are going to be even better this year than last year. You have, obviously, the Seahawks, and you have the 49ers. So the Rams are going to be in an extremely tough division if they want to make the playoffs and bounce back. So I'm interested to see how they fare. And you're going to have 2 games against the 49ers, 2 games against the Seahawks, obviously, 2 games against the Cardinals. I'm interested to see how this offense is going to look against tough defenses and against the rest of the league that maybe is making adjustments. Can Sean McVay get back to that level of 2018 when he took the league by storm? In 2017, 2018, he was the darling of the NFL. He was the guy that every team wanted a piece of, where they're hiring Zach Taylor, who is a quarterback coach for a year, before taking him away, whether it's hiring Matt LaFleur. It seemed like basically anyone that Sean McVay came in contact with, even gave a high five to, they were getting an interview for a coordinator position or a head coaching position. I mean, after they've been in the league 5 minutes or 50 years, whoever Sean McVay touched, teams wanted to have a part of. I wonder if that shine started to run off, and I'm interested to see if Sean McVay can get it back. So those are at least my 4 teams, and why I have the Rams at 13. I have the Colts at 16, the Saints at 15, Packers at 14, and the Rams at number 13. We are closing in. Again, we are, so let's see, quick math here. We are 20 teams through the most intriguing list as we work our way towards the number 1 spot and the most intriguing teams to watch in 2020. We still have a lot of teams out there, some interesting ones I think will surprise you. And tune in on Monday as we go from number 12 to number 9 as we slowly work our way as our countdown to number 1 and the most intriguing, the most exciting NFL team continues. But when we come back, it is the fastest growing game show in all of America. It is 2020 or Apocalypse, where we have contestants participate 5 questions. Is something that happened in 2020? Is something that only happened in the Apocalypse? With first and second place get prizes. So far, we have a heavy leaderboard. We have Sarah, who participated on Monday, 4 to 5. Lauren, who participated last Thursday, 4 to 5. You had Nick, who started us off, going 3 to 5. So we'll tell you who our next contestant is and how, if they can be really first place all alone, going 5 out of 5. We'll get to that when the Morning Boys Ryan Hickey return right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
And welcome back into the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It is the Morning Boys with Ryan Hickey right here with you. And it is 10:20 on the East Coast, which means that you know what it is, the fastest growing game show in all of America. It is 2020 or Apocalypse. We've had some really high scores of late, something I was not anticipating. So hopefully the questions aren't getting too easy. But we had Sarah just on Monday get 4 to 5. We had Lauren on last Thursday get 4 to 5. So those two are tied at first place. In second place, we have Nick 3 to 5. So really strong showing so far through 2020 or Apocalypse. And we have our next contestant, another one of my guys from Penn State, Mike. What's going on, Mike? How are you?
What's going on, man? Happy to be here.
We appreciate you playing. We hopefully we'll give you a fair shakeout here. I feel like it's either gone too hard or too easy. So hopefully we're going to go right in the middle.
I'm hoping just one at a time. Got to get one right. And we'll go from there.
I feel like everyone who said I'm just trying to get one has gotten like 4 or 5. So I mean, hey, you go 5 out of 5, you're set. You're in first place.
I need another Earl Thomas softball like you gave to Nick. So I'll get it this time.
Yeah, go figure. I still can't believe he didn't get that one, but we'll try to give you something like that. Are you ready to roll?
I'm ready.
All right. 2020 or Apocalypse, 5 questions. Does this happen in 2020 or only happen in the Apocalypse? Number 1, a spray park in Arizona is set to open this week, and they're promoting the fact that they are opening under normal circumstances, meaning not wearing a mask is encouraged and social distancing won't be enforced. 2020 or Apocalypse?
I'm going to say, let's go 2020.
Ooh, that is thankfully, that is the Apocalypse. No place yet is not encouraging wearing a mask or social distancing not being enforced. I mean, the sad part is it's not surprising.
I was saying you never know what people have been doing lately. So
I know. It is wild. It is absolutely wild. But thankfully, right now, no organizations are promoting this. Right, you just have the people that are protesting instead, but no organization. So 0 for 1. But hey, you still get 4 right. You're still in the money. You're still in first place. Are you ready for number 2?
All right, ready.
You like this one. A nudist organization in the United Kingdom has doubled in size since the quarantine began. 2020 or Apocalypse?
Let's go 2020.
That is 2020. That's absolutely true. British Naturism, which is a nudist group, gained 210 members, which doubled their size the last 2 months as the pandemic, I guess, in the UK, is leading to nudity in your house being more popular. Would you be one of those people that would have joined if the U.S. had a version?
No, I think I'll spare people's eyesight for that one.
That is, yeah. And I was reading the article. It's wild. Like they would, obviously in your house you can't leave, but it's like they would have virtual like coffee sessions where like you could basically everyone like zooms into like a virtual coffee cafe or have like these meetings, or essentially where you can just see everyone nude. It's wild, but that is.
Gotta make sure the heat's on.
That is so right. Can't open those windows with what it's been like in the Northeast here because, yeah, cold weather is not a fan of us guys. That is for sure. So, 1 out of 2. You ready for number 3?
Ready for 3.
All right, number 3. Shoplifters wore watermelons on their head as a disguise while robbing a store in Virginia. 2020 or apocalypse?
Oh, man. I feel like this could go either way. Let's go 2020. I feel like this is something.
That is absolutely 2020. Shoplifters were caught on surveillance camera as they hollowed out a watermelon and even cut out eye holes, as I guess either the ski masks were out of stock, or now with people wanting masks. And these guys are still at large, which is, I feel like, kind of wild. Like, how do you not spot someone wearing watermelons on their head, either out in the open or whatever? But they absolutely went into a store with the disguise as a hollowed out watermelon. You got it. You're 2 out of 3 so far. You're crushing it, man.
All right, good. All right.
All right. Number 4, a car dealership in Alabama is selling a corona-free plug-in that you can put into your new car to prevent the virus from entering the car. 2020 or apocalypse?
So a corona-free like plug-in for the
Yeah,
car?
so it's an add-on that they're selling with the car that you can plug it in. It's supposed to block any coronavirus from entering the car, and if it's in the car, it's supposed to kill it. 2020, is this an offer? Is this an add-on that you can get at an Alabama car dealership?
Let's go apocalypse.
That is thankfully the apocalypse. There's no, if you're familiar with the movie Borat, there's no plug-in that can all of a sudden have the girls come to you, or in this case, kill the coronavirus. So that is absolutely apocalypse.
Listen, with the way people have been acting and what people have been promoting now, you don't know anymore.
That's what makes this game so much fun. It's just so ridiculous, the things that there's no way this could be real, and you read it. It's real.
Just skim through Facebook for 5 minutes and you'll see half this stuff.
I mean, it is absolutely wild. The coronavirus and this quarantine is making people. You really see people's true colors and how gullible some people really are.
100%.
It is absolutely nuts. But 4 to 5. Before we get to number 5, so I'm curious. So you're a big golfer. You've been on the links. What has that been like? It's
actually been like extremely pleasant. I've never played a fast round at Bethpage in my life.
The
tee times are spaced out. Everybody's walking, so everybody's on the same pace, and you have no one in front of you or like behind you pushing you. So it's actually been like a super pleasant experience, better than what it usually is.
Interesting. I was supposed to play golf for the first time today, and like, do you wear a mask at all, or gloves, or is it all you just roll up, you don't really see anyone, or just what's the protocol?
Where are you playing?
Peninsula in Massapequa, I think, or wherever.
Oh yeah, I played there before. It depends how you're paying ahead of time.
That I don't know. I have to figure out. One of my friends booked it. I got to ask him how he did it.
Yeah, because I know Bethpage you pay over the phone, so you didn't really need a mask because you're okay. You just walk up and go on the tee. I mean, you can wear a mask at the beginning if you want, but it's kind of hard to walk with the mask on. I think the only time you probably need a mask is if you have to go inside to pay. But other than that, no one was really wearing a mask on the course.
Okay, I mean, I don't want to sound selfish here, but I hate wearing the mask. It's so uncomfortable. So I wasn't sure, but I also feel like bad. Like everyone's wearing it, so I'm not trying to be that guy that's like. No, I'm not trying to be Mr. Tough Guy, but.
I think anything outside, when you're in enough space, you're fine. I think probably just if you have to go inside and pay somewhere, they'll probably make you put a mask on. But other than that, you should be fine with that one.
All right, that's good to know. And that's if you're a golfer out there, that's at least for me going out the first time today. You're a pro in the link, so that's at least good to hear. And we're making strides, thankfully. We're definitely making strides. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Paulie.
No, you'll have a good time because you won't have to wait on anyone.
That's good. Now, I guess my issue is going to be if I slice it and hit it into another group, I have to go by them. I know that's a whole other.
You'll have plenty of time to look for your ball today.
I might not even look. I'm just going to bring a ton. That is my game plan. This is the first time I'm golfing in like almost 2 years. I threw in my back 2 years ago, and I have not played since. So I'm a little nervous about how today's going to go. But yeah, I think I'm just going to load up. Today can't be the day, right? Especially now, you can't be looking for the ball, going near other groups, hitting on other fairways. I'm going to try to keep to my own fairway.
It depends what those balls mean to you, how cheap you are or not.
That's true. If I lose 20 on the front nine, all of a sudden maybe I'll start valuing them a little bit more and may have to start breaking some social distance protocols. Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, boy. All right, so you ready for number 5? So far, you're 3 out of 4. You're crushing it.
All right, let's see if I can tie.
For a tie for first place, you're already tied for second place with Nick. Let's see if you can go to first place. United Airlines started boarding passengers sitting in the coach section through the emergency exits in order to protect those sitting in first class from being exposed to the virus. Apocalypse or 2020?
Oh, man. Let's go 2020.
That is, thankfully, the apocalypse. There's no marquee boarding for those to protect the first class and basically, keep us simpletons to infect ourselves while sparing the rich. Thankfully, at least right now. I mean, as we know, the crazy things happen. That is not the case, at least at the moment. But
I guess American makes sense. I'm thinking of we're used to Spirit Airlines. They probably are putting people through the coach check.
That's true. I guess for someone like me and you, or we're not used to, we don't know what it's like to fly nice.
You fly enough Spirit Airlines to Indianapolis.
Listen, hopefully, fingers crossed, we can. I would do anything impossible right now if you can give me a Spirit Airlines book to Indianapolis in December. I'm all in.
Oh my God!
Coronavirus be damned, I'm there. I am there.
That's the light at the end of the tunnel.
That for real. And hey, you hear Gene Smith, Ohio State, saying that he's going to have 20 to 30,000 fans in the Ohio Stadium this year. So.
Yeah. I saw he walked it back because people got mad. He was saying that 20 is the lowest. They can probably have 50 if they loosen up their restrictions even more. So. It is
wild. Would you go if Penn State or any sport had let's say quarter capacity? Would you go?
I mean, I don't go to the games half the time now when there's no restrictions, so I don't know.
That's true. I guess you're the wrong person to ask. You were
I feel like it's such a hassle because they were the Dolphins saying how they're gonna have to put people out of the stadiums in waves. I feel like that's such a tedious experience for one game. I don't know. Maybe.
And even going into they're going to do the waves. Imagine you're your ticket is the first wave in. You're going to be in the game 3 hours before the game starts. I know you're not going in on time.
Yeah, I know some people who are in the game that early, but
coronavirus or no coronavirus, we do know a few people that open up the stadium before the players even get in there. They're the ones cleaning the seats and are scouting out the opponents for sure. But Mike, man, 3 out of 5, you're sitting in the money still. I know. Let's see.
All right. Yeah, me and Nick. So
you and Nick, 2 peas in a pod there, 3 out of 5. So hey, listen, that gift card is still in your possession so far. So whether it's DJ's, anywhere you want it, so far you're sitting in the money. Anywhere you want to sponsor locally. So thanks for playing, man. Appreciate it, and congrats.
No, it was a pleasure. We're down memory lane from picking Nick.
Oh, those are the good old days for sure. I told Nick anytime he wants to work for free, the co-host spot is open for him.
100%. And hopefully we get this NHL playoffs going. I'll call in.
Oh, God. I hope so. 2014 playoff. I'm all in. I'm all in on that. Let's get the Rangers.
Rangers Hurricanes. Dream matchup. First round.
Healthy Chris Kreider. Give me it. Give me that all day. 3 out of 5. Mike, crushed it. Thanks, man. Again, appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks. Keep it up.
That is Mike Pooley, my guy. Also, essential workers. We appreciate his support. He has been on the front lines these last few months, and he just said off air. I should have just actually asked him this, but he said off air that for the first time in 2 months, his floor that he usually works on is corona free. The last 2 months, it's been all coronavirus patients, and he said for the first time last week in 2 months, corona free. So at least hopefully that's a great sign of all of us kind of turning the corner and hopefully finally starting to slow down the spread, and at least hopefully that could lead us back to living somewhat of a normal life. So Mike, 3 out of 5, tied for second place with Nick. We do appreciate him playing. So when we come back, we'll finish up. I want to ask you a question. Why is there so much hate and so much disrespect for LeBron James? We'll finish up when the Morning Boys Ryan Hickey return right here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.
It's the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. It's time to wake up with the Morning Boys on Worldwide Sports Radio Network. And here's your host, Ryan Hickey.
Welcome back into the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. Today is the Morning Boys with Ryan Hickey right here with you on this Thursday morning. We appreciate you tuning in and listening. We also appreciate Mike for joining in and being our participant in 2020 or Apocalypse. Did a great job, 3 out of 5. He is in the money right now, tied for Nick for second place. So right now we have Lauren and Sarah tied for first, 4 out of 5. Nick and Mike tied for second, 3 out of 5. If you want to be our participant, if you want to be a contestant, reach out, whether it's Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, whether it's Twitter. You could tweet me personally, Ryan_Hickey, number 3. Most of you watching probably have my number, mostly or family and friends. If you want to reach out, shoot me a text and we'll get you on the show as a contestant for sure as soon as possible when the show resumes. On Memorial Day, we will have a show on Memorial Day Monday. A little bit different of a Memorial Day for sure. We'll try to make it a little extra special and try to make it a little bit different than basically every other day we've had for the last 2.5 months or so. So we do appreciate you tuning in. Any thoughts? We've covered a lot so far, whether it's fake crowd noise that Fox is trying to pipe in under the broadcast. I think it'll be a pretty bad idea. Definitely have to I think it'll be actually a better viewing experience if you hear what's going on the field, if you hear the hits in football, if you hear the adjustments and the coaches and the players talking together and the trash talk that goes on the field. I think that would definitely make it more of a unique experience and a better viewing experience for those at home without any fans. NFL has a major issue with lack of diversity. They have an even bigger issue with lack of open-mindedness, and that lack of open-mindedness is the reason why there's not a lot of diverse hires in the coaching ranks and in the general manager and the front office ranks. More owners and general managers and front officers have to be open-minded, trying to go out of the box, trying to just take the best candidate possible instead of maybe just having this box in their head checked or maybe trying to fill out, in their mind, what an ideal general manager or coach should come from, should look like, what their experiences should be. So until that open-mindedness changes, no incentives, no rules are going to change the lack of diversity, unfortunately, at least in my mind, for sure. And we started the show. This is, a question I'll take your thoughts on as well. NBA talking about resuming, having it be in one city, which seems to be right now the front runner being Orlando. They're talking about even resuming the regular season. I think it'd be a big mistake. NBA has to make sure and preserve the playoffs and make sure the playoffs are played in full. Best way to do that, limit the amount of teams that are there, so only allow the playoff teams that would qualify to go down to Orlando. That's 16 teams, so you keep the league safe. Instead of 30 teams, it's only 16 as well. And then again, it's a lot easier to keep those players safe than a full league safe for sure, and thus ensuring as much as you possibly can of the playoffs are played in full, which really is, a lot of the money. 62% of the league revenue for the year generates through the playoffs. $900 million television revenue that the league gets from ESPN and from TNT for playoff games. Both of that will be gone if the playoffs aren't played or not, played in full or not even attempted because the league couldn't get going with keeping players safe and keeping full teams from getting sick. So look at your thoughts as we wrap up here, whether it's on Facebook, Worldwide Sports Radio Network, or whether it's on Twitter, WWSRN_radio. We do have some cheering as Lauren. She's sitting in first place, easy for her to say, but she was rooting for Mike to do well, but don't get more than 3. He listened, Lauren, so you're welcome there. He only got 3, so you are still comfortably tied for first place, so I'm sure she's very happy about that in 2020 or Apocalypse. So last question I wanted to kind of get into here, and it's I should say last topic I want to get into, and it's a question, and I really try not to do this too much. Anytime I pose a question or bring up a topic, I won't have an answer. I want to have some sort of solution for you guys that we can discuss, enhance, whether you agree, disagree, or not. But I try not to at least bring too many open-ended questions because if I don't have an answer, it's tough to really kind of talk about and break down and discuss in a way. But this question I'm about to pose, I don't have an answer for. I'm really curious, honestly, if you fall into this category of why I think this way, and that is why is there so much hate? Why is there so much disrespect thrown towards LeBron James? And this is not just, coming off of one event. This has really been going on for a long time. I feel like recently has been exacerbated from The Last Dance, and even now, Paul Pierce made some comments yesterday that were very questionable. But it almost feels very trendy to claim that LeBron isn't that good, to claim he's not an all-time great, to claim that, he wouldn't have played well during Michael Jordan's era in the 80s and the 90s, and he wouldn't have fit in with the physical play and the hand-checking. Why is that so trendy? I'm genuinely curious as to why there's so much hate, there's so much disrespect thrown towards his way, because he's an all-time great. We all know that, right? We are watching greatness as it happens. That was the great thing about Michael Jordan. You knew this was greatness. You knew there was nothing else like you ever seen before watching him play. I think The Last Dance did a great job of showing that. I mean, similarly, LeBron is that player now. I'm not doing a LeBron versus MJ debate here because that always ends negatively. There's always yelling and screaming, and there's no real answer. But I feel like ever since The Last Dance came about, these last 5 Sundays, there's been way more hate, way more shade thrown at LeBron James more than anything else. And this is what it really kind of hit home. I really noticed it just this past Sunday on SportsCenter watching with Scott Van Pelt after the finale of The Last Dance. And ESPN rolled out and conducted a fan poll. And how they did it was they had a 17-question survey basically asking LeBron versus MJ in many different categories. So not just asking the blanket question, who's the better player, LeBron versus MJ. What they did is they broke it down to categories. Best offensive passer, best scorer, person who you rely on to take the final shot, off the court impacts. It was all these different questions, again, 17 of them, that they had 615 fans participate in. And they broke it down and talked about the results on SportsCenter. Not surprisingly, not shockingly, MJ won all 17 categories. And really won all 17 categories going away almost. I mean, out of the 17, the closest voting was that Michael Jordan won 57% to 43% on who you trust to pass you the ball more. And that was the only, that was the closest voting. Again, Michael Jordan won with 57% of the voting. And I just feel like this poll, and it was talked about on SportsCenter after The Last Dance. It felt to me, at least, looking at these results and hearing the discussion, it felt like no matter what, the voting was going to be biased. Right? It's tough to kind of roll out this documentary praising and claiming how great Michael Jordan is, which I'm not taking anything away from. I'm not trying to get into that debate. But it feels like they rolled this out timing-wise to kind of basically capture people's emotions, getting involved with, oh, man, he's the best ever. It's not even close. And I feel like the voting tried as much as possible to push LeBron away and try to almost diminish his greatness. And there's a few categories that are thrown out there that I really felt LeBron should have won or been close to, and it wasn't even close. And it almost felt like no matter what the question was, they were going to pit themselves, against LeBron James, try to knock him down as much as possible and try to hype up Michael Jordan. Basically, everything that Michael Jordan does, when you compare him to LeBron James, it's better. No matter what the category, no matter what question you ask, people are going to say Michael Jordan is better. And there's 2 questions that I really want to pick out here to kind of show this. And again, I'm trying to figure out why there's such a bias, why there is just this passion and this vitriol against LeBron James for no reason. And so one of the questions in one of the categories was, who had the more positive impact off the court, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? Michael Jordan, again, I told you, he won every category. He won this one. But what I'm confused about is, to me at least, maybe I'm taking the question wrong, but to me, positive impact off the court means what have you done charity-wise? What have you done to help your community? What have you done to help those less fortunate than you? I mean, Michael Jordan, in the documentary, in The Last Dance, was criticized by Barack Obama and by others for not taking a stand politically, for really, only caring about the money. I mean, the Republicans buy shoes too. That was, really, that comment and quote was blown up. But, you had, it was the governor race in North Carolina that Michael Jordan didn't speak out on. You had other issues, other social issues that Michael Jordan just didn't get himself into, which is fine. I'm not saying you have to do it. As a player, you don't have to talk about stuff you aren't aware of. So I respect Michael Jordan for not talking about it, because if you don't know what you're talking about, it only can get you in trouble. But when you look at what LeBron has done, and he has spoken out against social justice issues. He had that fight with the shut up and dribble comment from Fox News that he pushed back on. And he's spoken up, whether it's in press conferences, whether it's on social media, of the injustice going on in America. And he's spoken about it. He also created the I Promise School, elementary school in Akron that pays for tuition for elementary school kids and then promises a full scholarship to the University of Akron. So in his hometown where he grew up, in Akron, Ohio, he created an elementary school where the tuition is free. And he gave those kids a path to go to college for free by promising all these students scholarships to the university. So to me, I look at a positive impact off the court. I'm not looking at Gatorade commercials, movies, shoe sales. I'm looking at what he has done to help the community around him, what he has done to help those less fortunate. Again, Michael Jordan has donated to many charitable causes. I'm not trying to knock him. I'm not saying he's selfish or greedy or that he hasn't really helped those around him. He has. But I would say LeBron has definitely had a more positive impact off the court. So I don't get that because I feel like, again, it was one of those questions where you could have asked, who has the better, which player, I'm trying to think of a question here, what I can do. Who has the better beard? LeBron James or Michael Jordan? One of them didn't have a beard, but people would still vote Michael Jordan. Just because it's Michael Jordan versus LeBron. No matter what the question is, I'm going Michael Jordan's side. And I feel like that biased voting was taken here in this question. And the other question also that was just egregious was that one of the questions was, who is the better passer? Michael Jordan won. But again, I feel like people just are trying their hardest to try to make LeBron not as great as he is, trying to really diminish all the accomplishments he has. People do realize LeBron James is one of the best passers of the basketball we've ever seen, right? If you don't want to believe it or you want to look at stats to back up, LeBron James has 3,500. That's 3,500 more assists than Michael Jordan. So you want to roll with stats? Sure, I'll roll with stats. And you have 3,500 more assists and counting. I would say you're the better passer. I would. LeBron's one of the best passers of the NBA we've ever seen. So I just feel like this poll, and I feel like SportsCenter and Scott Van Pelt almost did this, kind of exacerbated this. No matter what the category was, fans were choosing Michael Jordan. In the time where everyone is reminiscing, right? For those who are alive to see Michael Jordan play and remember his dominance and the Bulls' dominance, it was great to go down memory lane. It was great to see, a lot of footage you've never seen before. But so if anything, we all talked about this documentary really helped cement Michael Jordan, his legacy, and really, if anything, puffed him up. Right? Michael Jordan, before the documentary came out and said he's worried that his public persona, his public perception is going to take a hit because people wouldn't understand how competitive he is, why his drive was what it was. And if anything, again, I feel like all of these stories that, maybe we didn't know about or maybe painted Michael in a bad light before, the documentary covered it. And I feel like, if anything, we came out understanding and appreciating his greatness more. So I think when people are caught up in their emotions and thinking like this, no matter what the question you ask, and you run this poll out during now, I think no matter what, people are going to say, oh, man, Michael is way better than LeBron James. And then to add on to this, to keep piling on, to keep trying to knock LeBron down, Paul Pierce, Wednesday, an NBA Countdown, they did it like a Zoom discussion. And Paul Pierce listed his top 5 players of all time. And conveniently, he left LeBron James off the list. Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, Kobe Bryant. And I'm just trying to understand why there is all of this hatred and why it's so in vogue to try to say LeBron James is already not a top 5 player, really is a top 2 player. And the main discussion is, number 1, Michael Jordan or LeBron James. But to constantly disrespect this guy for what he's doing, at his age nonetheless, but what he's done throughout his entire career, doesn't make any sense to me. And you look statistically where LeBron James is right now. He's the only player in NBA history to be in the top 10 in total assists and total points. He's the only one. So he's passed the ball great at an elite level. He's scored at an elite level. He's the only player in NBA history to tally over 34,000 points, 9,000 rebounds, 9,000 assists. So he has a very well-rounded game that, again, he's an elite company with, where he does all 3 great, that no one else has been able to do. And he's 4,300 points behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the scoring record. And I did some math. If he misses the playoffs, just plays 5 more regular seasons, plays all 82 games, he has to average 10 points a game. So barring injury, I think LeBron's going to get there and surpass Kareem and be the all-time leading scorer. So I'm just trying to figure out why the disrespect? Why are we trying to knock this guy down? Is it because he's playing in the now and we have like an anti-recency bias? We're trying our hardest not to reward those players playing now and instead try to look back and elevate those players that played in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s? Because you put LeBron in any era, he's dominating. I mean, the fact that people were trying to, we're watching the Last Dance episode when Michael kept falling, losing to the Pistons, and they kept talking about, oh man, the bad boy Pistons, look how much they beat up Michael. LeBron would never succeed in this league when, you go too hard to the rim, you get knocked down, and no fouls are called. I mean, LeBron James is 6'9". He would crush Bill Laimbeer if he drove to the lane. The guy's a machine. That's what makes him so impressive. He's a guy who's built as a power forward that he's a robot. He can handle the ball. He can drive to the hole. He can play center if you need to in small ball situations. He can play anywhere on the court. He can shoot anywhere on the court. And speaking of shooting, this is a guy who's only improved as his career went on. Shouldn't we also applaud that and appreciate that an all-time great only kept improving as he's gotten older? Think about it. He came into the league. He shot 41% his rookie year. And that was a big knock on LeBron James. He couldn't get a jump shot. He couldn't shoot from three. He couldn't hit a jumper. He struggled to hit his field goal percentage when it wasn't a layup or wasn't a drive to the lane. Guess what? He's up to 49% this year. He shot 51% from the field last year. And from three, he was 29% from deep his rookie year. Now he's up to almost 35% this season. So this is a guy that, after working on his craft, got better as it goes on. And we've seen the progression from him. From when he first started in Cleveland, where he can only really drive to the lane. Couldn't shoot it, couldn't hit a jumper. That was the big critique. And he continues to work on his game, continues to increase the clutch factor, taking shots late, making those shots, expanding his game, going from three, shooting that, knocking down the three-point ball. I'm just so confused personally why everyone is trying to diminish these accomplishments. We're all like, why it's in vogue to try to knock LeBron James. Even some of my friends, I'll be talking to them during the, recently, and it's, LeBron's such a wuss. He's not that good. This obviously cements why Michael Jordan is the greatest. And I'm not trying to say that Michael Jordan is not or knock down what Michael Jordan is doing. And can we actually just please appreciate what we're watching from this superstar that in 20 years, if he has a similar documentary, we're going to all have regret, like, oh man, this guy was so much better than we really thought. We got to really give him credit. That's what's going to happen. Revisionist history, it's going to go back, and all of a sudden, everyone the last 20 years from now is going to be like, oh man, see, I knew LeBron was so good. The question, he definitely is right there with MJ. Maybe even by the time that we see all his, accomplishments and all his stats, he might be even better than MJ. So I'm just curious of the disrespect, to be honest. And I would just love to know why. If you do have any comments, we'll finish up here on the Worldwide Sports Radio Network. Nick chimes in. I made the example before of even if you asked who the greatest beard was, LeBron or Michael Jordan, and Jordan didn't have a beard, so by default you should vote LeBron James. Nick writes in, LeBron's beard is terrible, so I'd vote Jordan on that too. Well, there you go, folks. I guess LeBron, when it's compared to MJ, can't win any category. Beth writes in, LeBron, he's amazing off the court with the school and other philanthropy. Beth's right. I mean, he has done so much great work, which is why, again, I just feel like in that category, people are trying their best just to knock him, and I don't get why. And it's gonna, what's gonna happen in 20 years when he retires, and again, statistically, he's either the best player we've ever seen or right up there. All of a sudden, we're gonna go back and just remember and then talk about, give him the credit he deserves now, but then do it in 20, 30 years from now because we finally kind of digest what's going on. I just don't get why people aren't allowed to appreciate what they're watching now. And is LeBron a little bit of a baby? Sure. A little bit of a drama queen? Sure. Right, with the flopping, maybe he wants the attention too much. You see him on social media. He does a lot of it for attention. Fine. We all have our pitfalls. We all have our downfalls. But to try to, maybe to take that, that disdain or for whatever reason, again, try to just knock him down anytime there's a discussion about his greatness. I just don't get. Paul Pierce obviously is just salty and bitter, but to not even put the guy in the top 5 is just absolutely ridiculous. So it was just one of those things that I noticed, especially over the last few weeks as this documentary is going on, that anytime, Michael Jordan accomplished something, the next retort would be, oh man, LeBron would never hold his team as accountable. LeBron would never make it, through the bad boy Pistons or stuff like that. It's just, I want to get that off my chest and ask a serious question of why there's so much hate. If you are a LeBron hater, anti-LeBron, I'm just curious why, to be honest. I think he legitimately has a chance to be the greatest player of all time. Surpass Michael Jordan. He's going to do it statistically. He's already passed him for most points scored. Could have the lead when it's all done. Only player with, top 10 in assists and points. He's doing things we've never seen before. Hope we just appreciate it before it's too late. That's going to do it for this edition of the Morning Boys. Appreciate everyone who tuned in. Appreciate Mike for coming on and competing in 2020 or Apocalypse. We will be back on Monday, Memorial Day Monday. Have a great show for you planned and lined up there. So if you want to get in, want to be a participant on Memorial Day, we'll try to make it a theme 2020 or Apocalypse there for sure. So let me know. Reach out between now and then. But in the meantime, everyone have a great weekend. A great Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy it as much as you can. Stay safe.
You're listening to the Worldwide Sports Radio Network.